Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today is a beautiful show. We're going to talk about a destination. No, not to Miami, not to Cancun and all that kind of stuff, but a destination of enlightenment. One in particular, a young lady is going to come on this show and she's going to tell us about that destination that she knew about from birth until current. Welcome to the show, the beautiful Rebecca Starling. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
You know what? Me and you talked for hours and we could have talked on and on and on about your life. And your life is definitely one of adventure. Let's put it like that. This is part one. So let me just throw it out there. This is part one of the venture, because we're going to come back later with a part two. But I asked you to come on the show and to start part one of this is to help people understand how to get to that blueprint. That way, when you come back for the second part, they can understand the full impact of the puzzle. Tell the viewers a little bit about Rebecca Starling before we get started.
All right. Well, I'm just your typical Southern girl. I was born and raised in Georgia. Nothing super special about me. I'm just an average person. I love animals. I love fitness. I love cars. I'm a tomboy, but I am also all girl. And I've lived an awful lot of life, and I've learned an awful lot through the life that I've lived. And like you said, I, from as early as I can remember, always had a mindset that was very different than other people. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard of an awakening. I didn't even know what that meant, as a matter of fact. But I'd never experienced anxiety or depression. So I didn't really know what that was either. Mm-hmm. I came to find out really early in life that my way of thinking about things was very different than most people. And like we spoke yesterday, at one point when I was around 10 years old, I was laying in bed thinking, wow, I'm really different than these people that I'm living on this planet with. I think I'm the only real human, and I think everyone else here must be aliens. There's no way that we're the same because I think so differently. But it was my normal. I just thought everyone else was not normal. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
What was some of the things that you were thinking at the age of a 10-year-old? That, because it's not like you had a humongous circle at 10 years old. Let's be real.
Right.
What were people doing that was what we call norm that you thought was unnorm?
Well, I just saw a lot of people getting angry and getting really emotional and negative emotions over things that I could see in a whole different way. Whereas people were getting upset and pointing fingers and issuing blame, I could see both sides. I could see the person that was pushing that was, blaming, and I could see the perspective of the person being blamed. And I could see that it was literally that they just couldn't build the bridge together, and that neither one of them were wrong or right. It was just a differing of perspectives. And I always thought, wow, if you guys would just stop for a moment and ask the why behind what you're doing, it would probably change everything. And I had this just knowing that everyone was always doing the very best that they could. even if we didn't understand why they were doing the things they were doing. Because I had this picture of, from the beginning of time, where the Bible says God created man and woman, and then basically gave them the freedom to make choices. And they were the first humans. They didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And they chose a life without God's guidance. They chose the apple versus not the apple. Guidance for freedom versus guidance. So they chose freedom. Mm-hmm. And we're all learning. And it started from the beginning of time. And every generation from there on, people learning how to be humans, but also recognizing that we are the spirit of the Creator, that we are spirit beings having a human experience. We're all learning what that means to be human, because truthfully, the Creator gave us the freedom to figure that out. And no one is innately good or bad. People are just making decisions based on the way that they were raised. And can you be upset at the parents? Well, no, because the parents are living their life based on the way that they were raised. And it continues going back until the beginning of time.
How were you raised? How was you raised? Because you may be speaking on a higher vibration than most individuals that are listening right now. So let me kind of try to help take it down a little bit on the vibration scale. What was it? You mentioned you've always felt this way. Take the viewers into a little bit of what that really meant to you, because you don't have the guidance. You're young. You're 10 years old and younger, but you felt this before you was 10 years old. What were some of the other things that you were feeling? And did you share any of these emotions, because that's probably what it was, with individuals around you in your household?
I didn't, because I just assumed that they all thought the same way that I did, which is why I didn't understand why everyone was so angry. Because I didn't know that everyone didn't think in the same way that I did. I did know that people were taking things very personally, and it wasn't personal. Let's say, for instance, two people got into an argument. Person A took everything that person B said personally, and vice versa, when truthfully, I could see that everything that person A was saying was literally their hurts coming out. Mm-hmm. And person B was speaking, and it was their hurts coming out. And person A and person B came together to expose each other's hurts in order to heal. But instead of healing, they just got more angry. And I thought, this is going to be a vicious cycle if you guys can't realize that you're just hurting each other. And the hurts are really, those emotions are there as your guidance. And that hurt is there to help you understand you have the hurt. Mm-hmm. Like there's something in you that is unhealed. And if you can recognize that this person just helped you see it and you just helped them see it, then maybe you could talk about the why. Like, why did that hurt you?
You mentioned that you didn't understand hurt. You didn't understand a lot of the vibrational or emotional thoughts that individuals were going through as to this point in your life at 10 years old. What was the frequency, or what was the state of mind in your household? Because you're smiling. Did you come from a pretty structured environment with religion, with grounded parents, grounded brothers and sisters, the Leave It to Beaver type environment? What was it like in your household?
Okay, so I'm going to describe my household, but I would like to preface it with, I had two parents that loved me very, very much. And my parents did the very best that they could, given the life that they lived. Right. And maybe just to explain that, my mother was raised in foster care the majority of her life. She did not have a stable family home because of things that she went through. What she showed me is how to love everyone else at the expense of her own happiness.
Okay.
Because as a child, she wanted so desperately to feel loved that she didn't want anyone else to not feel loved. And so my mom gave of herself in a way that she made everyone feel loved, but it was at the expense of her own happiness. She never thought of herself. As a matter of fact, she put herself last, and I watched what that did to her. My dad was raised in an environment. I actually have felt like I want to have more of a conversation with my dad because he never speaks much about his life. But I know that his father died of a massive heart attack when he was 36 years old. And so he's one of 5 children, and his mother got remarried, and he ended up going to live with an uncle. So he was, I think, raised predominantly by this uncle. And this uncle was quite wealthy. And so my dad had, I think, some hurts. And in his hurts, maybe I'll just say from my perspective, because I don't ever want to put a voice to my dad without him being able to speak for himself. What my dad showed me is what a lack of real love looked like. So my dad's way of loving me was to be very, how do I say this in a loving way? He was, you won't do this. You won't. I was scared of my dad. I'll just put it that way. I was
he's very structured.
He wasn't structured. I love him. I do love him. And I would never want another dad, but my dad was mean as hell. That's the best way to put it.
Okay. Hey, you being real. Okay.
I'm just going to be real. Dad, I love you, but you could be honest. I mean, if you're watching this, you would be honest. And I think that in his fear of me making a bad decision or growing up to make decisions that he didn't want to be accountable for, it was just fear me, because if you do something you're not supposed to, it's going to not bode well for you. And he never abused me. He never hit me. I would say for me, sometimes I thought to myself, I wish he would just punch me instead of yelling at me, because the punch doesn't last nearly, the pain from the punch doesn't last nearly as long as the hurt from the words. Mm-hmm. But he didn't know any better. I really do know. My mom said to me once, and I believe it, he loved me in the best way. She said, Rebecca, he loves us in the best way he knows how. He is showing us the most.
To deal with, basically, your parents dealt, and we as humans, we deal with what we're given, basically.
Right.
And that's what you have to work with. And there appear to be what is a lack of, but it was reinstored in you the best way they knew how, by, if they were lacking the attention and stuff, they gave it to you to some degree. But how did that make, as you got older, now you got a special gift. Let's just call it what it is. You got a special gift. Do you ever come out and tell them what you're going through?
Well, I never went through anything because I'm not going to lie, Andre, don't judge me. But there was one time in my life.
All right, what was that?
I said, don't judge me. But there was one time in my life where I remember laying in bed and I looked up and I was like, am I the next coming of Christ? Because I don't want to be crucified. And it wasn't to like, I wasn't thinking of myself in a haughty way. I wasn't thinking that. I just thought, I don't think, like, when I would see people hurt people, I always felt really sorry for the person doing as much sorrow for the person doing the hurting as the one that was being hurt, because I understood that hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And I wanted so desperately to see the person who was doing the hurting. I wanted so desperately to see their heart healed, because I knew they were only doing it because of the hurt that they were feeling. So I never had anger. I never had frustration. I always just knew everyone was doing the very best that they could based on the life that they had experienced up until that point.
How did this growing up? Let's get past the 10-year mark. You get into the moment to where you are an adult and you still can resonate to people emotionally. And I know some people may find that hard to believe, but you're not operating on the same vibration. So let's be real about it. You get older. Your parents, now that you understand the frequencies of people to some degree, you know what you dealt with your mom, you know what you dealt with your dad, but now you're older. The experiences become more intense as you age too. You have to sooner or later realize that you've been anointed with something, but you haven't quite figured it out yet. Let's be real. You go into a relationship, and most people, I don't know how true this is, maybe you can elaborate. They say sometimes we marry our parents, whether it be a mom or if it's a guy, you marry somebody like your mom and so forth. If they didn't share and they try to teach you the best that they knew, but you're feeling on a different vibration, but you haven't explained it to nobody, but you get in a relationship, what's that like for you? How much of that emotions comes, when does the emotion start to change on that aspect?
Again, I can only speak from my experience, but I feel like I had a pretty normal teenage years, with the exception that I was probably always considered the underdog. I was always considered pretty or attractive and probably popular, but I was the one that would be the first to be picked on. I was the first one that if they're going to call someone out, I'm going to be the one that gets called out.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it didn't really bother me because I realized that they were only doing that because of whatever they were hurt from. But a little bit did kind of bother me. I mean, I think to some extent, I kind of was like, okay, I see how that's happening, but I really don't like it happening to me. So how do you overcome that? And my mom was so great. She told me my whole life, you're perfect. You're perfect. You're the perfect child. You're the most beautiful thing on the planet. And so I did go through a season of thinking, I'm perfect. and that didn't give me very many friends. As a matter of fact, there wasn't many people that wanted to hang out with anyone that thought they were perfect. And so I realized that technique, making friends, was not the right one. So then I thought, let me go to the opposite extreme. Let me be the least perfect, meaning let me call out all of my flaws. Let me be the first one to make fun of myself, because if I make fun of myself first, then no one else gets a chance to.
Right.
And this is, I think, that little season of life of finding out how your words affect you tremendously.
I was going to ask that. What were the reverse engineering that you did on yourself to have that happen to you?
It helped me so well really start to fine tune how spirituality and science are. I mean, I didn't know the science part of it. I just knew I'd been raised in a Christian home. So, and I say a Christian home, I'd been raised with Christian beliefs. There was a lot of Christian beliefs without a lot of Christian action.
Okay.
So I knew what was said, but I had never really seen it like lived in the way that it had been, put into the Bible. There were just a lot of things that, they didn't all line up. And I wanted, if this Bible was supposedly true and real, then I wanted to see how real it was. So I really paid attention. And for the majority of my life, the one thing that I said over and over and over is watch your words. Life and death are in the power of your tongue. And I realized really quickly when I started putting myself down, when I started pointing the finger at myself first, that I started feeling it. And I started feeling the opposite of perfect. I started feeling not so great, but I caught it quick enough that I knew, like, okay, this doesn't feel good. So there's got to be a balance. And that balance was, I can make fun and I can be poked at, and I can not let others affect me when they do it. And I can also not put myself down. Mm-hmm. I can make fun of the things, that I do that are funny, but not at the expense of, like the detriment of my character. So I learned really quickly to be very careful of your words. I have learned since then that it's not necessarily the words as much as the emotions behind the words. Like you said, I didn't really know anything about energy or frequency. None of those words all were satanic whenever I was learning all this stuff. So I would have never used that because I just was, it was strange. It was foreign. And so for me, because it wasn't familiar, I was really afraid of the devil and hell. So I did not want to take any chances.
More or less, you wind up, quote unquote, putting yourself in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
Through the power of words, and took those words that while your mom's basically enforcing positive, you decided to take but that positive was given a bad vibration to the people that was around you. And you just say, okay, well, let me do some reverse engineering and start using these bad words and realizing that there's power in words by walking in other people's shoes. How do you move forward with all this information now? Because clearly you're operating, let me use the word again, on a higher frequency. How do you get back to the frequency that you were originally at? And then how do you begin to change for those that still are not getting where you come from? Because let's be honest, you still haven't told anybody what frequency you're operating on.
Yeah, because I still didn't know that I was any different. I still had no idea that my thoughts were different. And I think what really kind of solidified words and emotions was when I was 16 or 17, I bought my first car, and it was a Honda Civic, and it was what they called chameleon red pearl, but it was Barney pink, purplish. It was pink. It was a pink car. And I had the option between a fully loaded, like 1-year-old car or a stock brand new car. And I was like, I want all the options, even though this is really not the color that I probably would choose. I do like it. And then one day, as I was just really quiet, my mind was quiet, I heard that internal voice say, you asked for that car when you were a kid. And I was like, what? And then I was reminded of this hot pink CRX that I had seen when I was a young kid. And I said over and over and over, that's going to be my car when I turn 16. That'll be my first car. That'll be my first car. And sure enough, a hot pink, they didn't make the CRX any longer. They had replaced it with a Honda Civic. And sure enough, my first car that I purchased was a hot pink Honda Civic. Wow. And I was like, oh my gosh, I created that with my words, and I didn't even realize that I was doing that. So I started being very, very aware. And then as I was aware, I started getting a little bit more information, which is the world was created with words. And if the world was created with words, and we are spirit beings having a human experience, we are creating with our words. And if you're not careful, you'll create something you don't want. So be extra careful with the words that you speak. And I was very, very careful. And I really never dropped in a lower frequency. And for those who don't know anything about frequency, because I didn't know anything, is There's joy, happiness, peace. The peace that passes all understanding is what the Bible talks about. I just always had that. I just always had peace that passed all understanding. I remember I had this boyfriend when I was, he wasn't really a boyfriend. He was a guy I really, really liked. And when I say I really liked him, he was the first guy that I found, or that I had a relationship with, who respected me and was kind and all of these really great things. And I remember he came to me and he was like, you're not, he was nice, but it was basically, you're not the girl for me. And I was crushed because I had such a big crush on him. And literally in that moment, I had just a couple of minutes of feeling that, like, heart drop devastation. And immediately that internal voice came to me, said, if you think you really liked that one, you just wait for the one I have in store for you. And I was like, oh, okay, done.
Okay.
Done. I mean, that was it. That was it for me. I didn't even give the guy a second thought after then. Because I was like, oh, okay, that's perfect. I'll just keep moving on, because if I liked him that much, there's someone even better suited for me. And that's kind of how it went. When a negative thought would come, I would be like, okay, but where's the counter positive thought? And I related it in my Christian faith was, this is my flesh talking, but what does God have to say about it?
Mm-hmm.
And then I could choose between which one I wanted to go with. And of course, I always want to go with the one of the higher energy, the higher vibration.
Right.
And so I just always chose that. And then in my marriage, I did marry an amazing man who, at one point in his life, before we got married, he did have some characteristics that my dad had. So you're right. And I'm certain that there was some healing that I still needed. Actually, I know that there was some healing that I still needed to overcome that I didn't even realize that was dormant there.
What were they, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'll be very honest. The two main ones were, I had experienced sexual abuse as a child, and trying not to see my husband at the time as that same energy. So for me, all I knew was if a man was making advances to you physically, it was for his own selfish gratification.
Okay.
Because I had experienced that.
So that became the norm for you. And
so that was the norm.
Related to your relationship. Did you explain this to your husband? Was it difficult?
Yes.
How did he handle it?
He did the very best he could. He obviously is not me and did not live my life experience. So he can only gauge what I was dealing with based on the words that I presented. And I've never liked the feeling of self-pity. That always felt like one of the lowest of frequencies. I'd never wanted someone to feel sorry for me. So trying to explain it, and then, like, in the same note, like, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I just want you to, like, let's figure out how to work through this. And we did. And ultimately, working through that, we had a pretty fantastic marriage. But some of the things that he had experienced before we got married, those are things that he needed to heal from and grow from. And those were things that kind of came out later in our marriage. And so it was a growing experience for both of us.
When he opened up and shared with you the emotional vibration, I'm not even going to use trauma, this is called emotional vibration.
That's right.
That he was dealing with, how did that resonate in your space? Because you're opening up yours, and that's two vibrations of dark matter, sort of speak, that you're trying to, first of all, it's coming to your life, but it's not the norm for you because you don't recognize that dark energy as dark energy. naturally he doesn't recognize it as dark energy vibration. But now you guys are married and these things are coming together. How do you're actually more experienced. How do you keep the relationship together? And if you couldn't, what made it falter?
So we were married for about 5 years before we encountered some what I like to call contrast. And contrast is just circumstances that present themselves to help two people, to help a person overcome a limiting belief in their life. And so we had a contrasting experience about 5 years into our marriage. And that helped us both have more clarity about what was important to us, and that was our marriage. And in having that experience, he and I both said that it was one of the toughest things we'd ever been through, yet we wouldn't have changed it for the world because of the growth that we experienced through it. And then,
tough experience, Rebecca.
Say that again.
What made it a tough experience that you ever been through? Because a lot of people be like, what experience did you have in order to understand how tough it really was?
Well, let's just say I will never tell my story at the expense of making someone else or revealing someone else's story.
Right.
However, through my process of healing from thinking that men can't make a physical advancement towards a woman without it being a selfish gratification, through that process, we had a lot of ups and downs. And also because as a child, what I thought was a normal marriage was a lot of arguing. I love you, Mom and Dad, but it's true. And so I thought that if we weren't arguing about something, then we weren't having a good marriage. So it was like, okay, this isn't going the way I wanted. This is the perfect thing to argue about so we can be a normal married couple. Well, right. He wasn't raised that way. So for him, it was just like, how can I keep this woman happy? Oh my God. Of course, I'm putting words in his mouth, but so through that, he found ways to make himself happy, an escape of sorts. And those things were not things that we had agreed upon when we made the vows. And I'll leave it at that. And it was tough. It was really, 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 really tough. But we made the decision that we were going to try to restore the marriage and give it all we had. And we did. And for the next 15 years, it was pretty perfect. We were together for a total of 26 years. And then at about year 18, there were just some shifts. And I am trying to be very mindful as I'm even sharing this, to be very careful, even with the energy that I'm coming from, because I've learned that it takes one mindset shift to take you from the peace that passes all understanding to the opposite end of it. So if anything that I'm saying is not coming from a place of love, then it's not coming from that high frequency, right, God source place.
Right.
So if I pause, it is because I am looking for guidance from the only one that can give the perfect words.
I got you.
But ultimately, if I could just generalize what happened, it was, I had found what I thought at that time, total enlightenment. I know now that I still had some things to learn, and I didn't actually know then that it was enlightenment. I just knew that I didn't need anything to make me happy, that I had found the freedom, I had found the peace that passes all understanding, and I wasn't willing to give it up for anyone. And how that came across, I can't answer that. Only my ex-husband can answer that. But however it came across, for him, and let me not even make that presumption. Something in him was shifting. He was experiencing some contrast in his own life that he did not talk to me about. We did not have communication about. But some of the things that we had lived through in the beginning that we had overcome began to resurface. And
don't you find that kind of, this may sound cliche, but almost like the norm when you think everything is right, something resurfaces to either reinforce your vibration or maybe to help you go back and reevaluate, and in the same process to elevate you to maybe another level of learning.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Absolutely. And it reminds me of I have a friend who's a yoga instructor, and they have to take these continued education courses in order to keep their certification. Why? Because we have to keep ourselves in remembrance of the things that are important for us to do what we're called to do. And we're all called to this place of enlightenment. And it's not a one and done. When something frustrating happens, I automatically stop and go, thank you. Thank you for showing me that frustration was creeping in, because if it weren't, this would not have frustrated me. And in the moment, I stop and go, okay, there's nothing to be frustrated about in this moment unless I allow it to frustrate me. How can I see this differently? And it is. And it doesn't matter how and how far into your enlightenment journey that you get, there's always going to be something, because we live in a world of a lot of people who've yet found that place of enlightenment. And because those energies and those personalities are still operating, we will be exposed to them, and energy is contagious.
What did you learn from that shift? What did you learn from that shift? Because you spoke very lovingly about your relationship. You spoke very lovingly about retrying. But the bigger picture is we're still dealing with the human flesh, the human mindset, not the enlightenment mindset, not the spiritual mindset, so to speak. But you're going into a world that you kept pretty much all of your inner vibrations to yourself. And a lot of people didn't know what you're vibrating on. You get into the marriage, you try to make these things work. How did that shift? What was the alignment shift for you? The marriage is no longer there. You still love your husband. You have beautiful kids. How did that feel with the shift of the vibration?
Well, ironically, going through our divorce at 23 years of marriage was when I took the largest shift of my entire life. Up until that point, I had always found the peace that passes all understanding. I just always did. No matter what happened, I could always find the best feeling thought about everything that I'd experienced. I just always could. But I will just tell you the thoughts that I had. And the thoughts that I had was, I did everything according to the rules. I followed every rule. I followed every rule to the every single detail. I did everything I was told to do. I mean, we were together for 3 years. We did not consummate our marriage till our wedding night. I never lied. I never cheated. I did all the right things. And he's divorcing me. Why? At that point, finding a positive thought was impossible for me, because I could not understand how if you're working a job and you're doing everything perfectly and you get fired, why? Like, I just needed a why. And because I couldn't see the why, I let every negative thought under the sun enter my mind because I could not find a positive thought. Now, I will say that on top of that, a couple of years before our marriage ended, I started getting a little annoyed at the fact that people would ask me for advice and I would give them advice and then they would come back. And I'm like, in my head, I didn't say this to them, but in my head, I'm like, why is it so hard? Just stop thinking the way you're thinking. It's just that easy. The Bible says, don't worry. You're worrying. And that's why you are where you are. What is wrong with you? Get your shit together. This is the truth. It's not okay. It wasn't right. It's not the way that I think anymore, but that was truthful. And basically, I put myself in a place of judgment. I had clarity that was such a gift that I didn't even know that I had because I didn't know anything differently. So why did no one know about my mindset? Because I didn't know that I didn't even know that it was special. I didn't know that I had this gift. I didn't know that I was in this place of enlightenment because I didn't know anything differently. So when people would explain to me about their panic attacks or their anxiety or their depression, I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, you're breathing. You can do anything you want to with this life. You're breathing. Why? Why are you letting something like that get to you? So what? He's not wanting you. There are plenty of men out there. Why are you wanting it? Just any little thing. I began being a little haughty, a little above you. I'm above you because I've never had that kind of a thought process. And it's just like the law of attraction to help you to understand it more clearly by allowing you to experience it.
What did you do? What did you do to change your vibrational shift? Because it's funny, when we first started the show and I asked you a particular question about your childhood, and you said, as a child, you saw conflict. You saw both sides. You felt the hurt on both individuals' part, and you wanted to be that in-between bridge. And you said your simple answer was why. So now, how do you get your why back? You got a gift. You recognize the gift is there. Unfortunately, it had to happen through the marriage cycle. How do you get back to where you need to be in a enlightenment, a vibrational instrument for the masses? Because you got people coming at you asking the same thing that you should have known. Why?
The best way to put it was like a spiritual amnesia. I didn't remember it. I didn't remember any of it. As a matter of fact, it was all I remember thinking to myself is, I've forgotten who I am. Like, I didn't forget everything that I could see. I didn't forget, my human life, but I had 100% forgotten everything about the positive mindset, it was the hardest season of my entire life, but it gave me very much clarity about what heaven is and what hell is. I used to have a really big problem with thinking of this God that loved me so much that would send me to hell. And then I had children and I thought, I don't care what my children did, I would never send them to a place that is described as this burning for eternity. And the Bible says God loves me more than I love myself, which means he loves my children more than I love me. So it didn't really add up to me, this place of hell. And what I realized is hell is a mindset that we do to ourselves. And it is a mindset where we shift from that peace that passes all understanding, trusting that the creator of this universe is literally in control. Well, not in control, has given you complete control and will take care of everything if you trust it. Because what I used to always say, faith is the door open, fear is the door closed.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always had faith and trusting, like, hey, I don't have to understand why this is working out this way. I just know that it's going to work out for me. And it always did. And it wasn't until it didn't work out the way that I expected it. It wasn't that it didn't work out for me. It just didn't work out the way that I expected it. And any other time it didn't work out the way I expected it, I could easily just go, oh, it just didn't. But learning about science and energy and frequencies, going through that season of darkness, and it was about 3 years that I would say I was in hell, because it took me 3 years to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I know literally what the valley of the shadow of death is like, because I lived it totally. I know exactly what hell is, and I could draw you a picture of exactly what it feels like and what it feels like trying to get your way out of there. And it was, I mean, I didn't want to live. I remember thinking, I can walk away from anyone saying ugly things to me, but I cannot walk away from the voices in my head.
Before we wrap up, you said something crucial. You said you walked through the valley of hell. And this is the hell in your mind, so people don't go all off into la la land somewhere. We're talking the hell in your mind. But you wanted to end your life. That's a serious vibrational shift from all of these years to going there. But it was, what's the one part of that hell trip that took you down that road of I want to just end it right now? Do you remember?
What took me there?
That one particular moment.
There wasn't one. There wasn't one particular moment. It was an incremental thing, and truthfully, learning about how the creator of this entire universe is so perfect that he created everything perfectly. And I say he loosely because that could offend some people. I don't mean for it to, but the creator of the universe created the law of attraction so that we would find ourselves back to who we truly are. And it's like this. The best way that I can describe it to make it understandable is that you are Andre, that is your human costume, and I am Rebecca, people call me Bex, and this is my human costume. But inside of you is God, and inside of me is God. And the God in you will be attracted to the God in me and pull us together to help us to see the places that aren't completely aligned and are completely aligned with who we truly are, which is love. So incrementally, I attracted, when I started being judgmental, because this was the season of my life where I realized I was really, I mean, I knew that my mindset was different, but I didn't know how different until I became an adult and I started having adult conversations. And I thought, and what I also realized is when I would share things with people, they would look at me like I'd grown a third eye. They couldn't even hear me. Mm-hmm. And I realized, like, these people can't hear what I'm saying. It's not even that they don't understand it. They actually cannot hear it. And it made me really confused. But what I've realized going through that season of vibrational hell was everything is a vibration. And if there are people listening to this right now and they're not getting it, it's because they're on a different vibrational level. Maybe you hear something, you hear words and you're like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Right.
Because everything is a different vibration, meaning if you want to listen to 88.5 and you tune to 97.6, you're not going to hear what's on this station if you're on this station. And basically what happened to me was, if 100 is the station of peace that passes all understanding, I slowly but surely, because thoughts are manifestations as well. So when you're at a high vibration, you will attract high vibration thoughts, because energy is not created or destroyed. So thoughts are energy.
What you bring to that space, huh?
That's right. When you drop in frequency, even just the slightest bit, you will attract those thoughts from that frequency. And for me, I was able to always catch it quickly. I could feel it. It's an emotion. I could feel the dip. Like I told you, it felt like a dark cloud had come overhead. And I was like, I'm blocking the light. Get that thought away from me because I'm not blocking the light.
Mm-hmm.
But in this season, because there was so much going on in my external world, I didn't catch the feeling quick enough. And then I began to manifest more thoughts from that lower frequency, which made me drop even more. Manifested more thoughts from that frequency, which made me drop even more.
Continuing cycle of death.
Yeah.
And death through words and law of attraction, pretty much is what it sounds like to me. Rebecca, what's two-part question. First of all, how can the viewers reach out to you, and what are you doing now?
Well, the viewers can reach out to me. I'm on social media. I have a fitness and coaching business called Metabolism Mastered. I'm on all the social media channels doing that, but I've also started and I'm on YouTube as well. But I started recently a separate channel on TikTok, and it's just called Bex, BEX. Where I've started sharing a little bit of my story, and I'm learning. It's kind of like anything else. Like literally coming through that season of my life was like I understand exactly what Jesus meant when he said you have to be born again, because I am completely born again, not by words, but literally born again. Because I'm not the same person, and I'm not the same person because I can relate to Jesus so much now. I went through death, hell, and the grave. I died. I went to hell, and then I came back to life through realizing that it's not about me, the human. It's about me, the God. And when we find that place of the peace that passes all understanding, we are enlightened, meaning the light has come back to us. And it's not something that everyone is ready for. And it does make me nervous when I begin to share these kind of things, because it's a high frequency type language. And I've found that a lot of people have this very boxed off view of what God is. Actually, I don't want to say it that way. People have beliefs that they have had for a very long time, and they have this fear of God in a way that if they venture outside of those beliefs, and I'm saying this from experience because I did the same thing, you venture outside of the beliefs that you've been taught, that you're going to go to hell, and that's a scary thing. But for me, I was already in hell. So I was like, I'm looking for any light because this feels horrible. So I will look for anything. I literally turned completely atheist because I didn't know anything else. I'm like, there's no way a God that loves me as much as I thought he loved me would let me go through this. And yet here I am. But God doesn't require you to acknowledge him or love him in order for him to love you and keep calling you to him. And that's exactly what happened with me. But in sharing my story, I have found that there are a lot of people on the same path, and it does help others to realize there is the top of the mountain, there is enlightenment, there is a rebirth, but also to realize that there are a lot of people who they're playing their role here in this life, and they're not ready for it. That's just not where they're at in their journey. And trying to walk in love for all frequencies, because that's what God does. He doesn't care where you're at. And to know that we're all here playing our part. The law of attraction is perfect. It always is, because God loves us that much.
Rebecca, a great story. You know what? We're going to come back with a part two of your story, because I know the story goes deeper than this. I got the notes over here. We talk. It goes deeper.
Yeah.
And the fact that you shared your story here, I'm blessed that you did that. I hope that that it will impact someone, because everybody's story doesn't impact everybody. Like you said, Everybody's not operating on those same vibrations. And before you individuals start to judge or criticize, remember, it wasn't your journey. She's the one that went through hell and back. We've all went to some degree, but we probably don't even realize it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.